Excuse me for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.
You believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Hey, thanks for checking us out. I'm your host, as always, Andrew Zimmel. This Monday morning, I know there's a lot of podcast links for you guys to check out. So checking us out means a lot, and you checked in on a very special episode. This is episode 50. For those of you that don't know, we started this podcast 50 episodes ago now, a little over a month. We've told you at the beginning we're going to be a daily podcast. We're going to give you sports, pop culture, gambling. I'm going to do everything in my power to give you the most entertaining show as possible. I said we're going to bring on guests. I said we were going to break down some topics that other podcast hosts, other radio hosts aren't going to talk about. We're going to go places that nobody thought that we would, and we have. And the feedback we've gotten from you guys is great. I said from the start that this only can work if you guys help us make it work. I don't want to scream in an abyss. I know there's a ton of other podcasts out there, so for you guys to check us out, I say this at the beginning of every episode. For you guys to check us out and listen to us, it means a lot. A young podcast, a lot of people, you started a couple episodes in, it phases out. I told you that we weren't going to do that. I said that you're going to get content from us at every single day. Maybe it's something you care about, like this one. We're going to be breaking down a lot of different things. Maybe it's one you don't. But keep checking in, because between the television breakdowns and the movie reviews, something is going to catch your eye. You're going to want to hear something. So thank you, those of you that stick with us. Thank you for those of you that are checking in for the first time. So it's a busy sports weekend. That's what we're going to focus on today. We're breaking down the Tyson and Wilder fight, what we liked from that fight. Then we're going to go over to LeBron's win over the Celtics on Sunday afternoon. There's some news out of baseball that's not Astros related. So anything non-Astros related, you know I'm going to jump on. And then a pop star's speech at the NAACP Award. We're going to get to that at the end of the podcast. So if you're only here for me breaking down some pop culture stuff, skip ahead in the episode and we'll get there. But let's start with Tyson and Wilder. The Tyson fight, Tyson Fury and Wilder fight, we knew it was going to be great. We knew that it was supposed to be one of the, if not the best fights of the last 5 years. They had fought this fight earlier and it had been called a draw. So both of these fighters come back in the ring undefeated. And it was the biggest heavyweight fight, according to ESPN, to go down the last 20 years. And it was Tyson Fury coming out and breaking down Deontay Wilder in a way that I don't think a lot of people expected. Now, before we get into what I liked from the fight, what I saw from Wilder, what I saw from Fury, and what I hope we see in the rematch, I want to say that the next fight is reportedly supposed to be between Fury and Anthony Joshua, which is another one that's going to happen about probably a year out from now. That's probably the next time we get this big heavyweight fight. What did we see in the rematch that we didn't see from the first time that these two fighters fought? It was Fury coming out and doing something that I didn't think anybody could do to Wilder. The analogy was made during the broadcast, and it's been made since then, and I really like it, so I'm going to kind of regurgitate it back to you, which I hate to do, but I really like this one. They compared it to when there's a new kid on the block, and the bully tries to ask for his lunch money, and the bully doesn't know that the new kid is like a black belt in Taekwondo. You know, the bully gets bullied. And that is exactly what Fury did in this fight. Is he went into Wilder like no fighter had. He got into him, got close, and was able to land some blows that I think a lot of people did not expect to see. I think what happens is a lot of the times in these fights that we've seen the fight before. And the big thing about boxing, big thing about UFC as well, is that you have to learn, you have to continue to build on what the fighter already knows. I say this about sports a lot, that for the casual fan just watching their living room, you might wonder why the team isn't throwing on first down. You might wonder why a boxer isn't getting more aggressive. But the thing is that there's so much film, there's so much analytics on these guys now that you need to come in with a good game plan. And that's exactly what Fury did. He came in more aggressive. He stepped up to Wilder and forced Wilder into his own corner. He got him to bleed early, which I thought was a really big deal. I know that that's like almost a movie cliche, but it is important, I think, to be able to land blows that break skin early in these fights. That getting your opponent to bleed not only is, I don't want to say a moral victory, but it forces the fight into a different place. You see this fight a lot in the featherweight and the welterweight division, where guys will be beating up on each other for an hour and a half almost, and neither one of them looks very bruised. They look winded, but they don't really look bruised. They don't look bloodied. Heavyweight fights, I think it's a necessity to get that blood. And we talked about this about 2 years ago. We said, what happened to the heavyweight division? The UFC was on the come up. The heavyweight and the middleweight division in UFC was getting a lot more viewers than pay-per-view boxing fights. It was getting a lot more national media recognition, and it helps that ESPN has now bought a lot of those deals with the boxing, and that they're going to promote it a lot more on their platforms. ESPN Plus was I think the only platform you could get this fight. But now, between Anthony Joshua and Wilder and Fury, there are now 4 to 5 legitimate heavyweight fighters in this circuit that I think are going to draw big crowds. And that's, I think, even more important for the sport of fighting, the sport of boxing, is that you have these guys that are going to be able to draw bigger crowds. And the arena crowd is always going to be there. I think that you could put 2 children in the boxing ring and you could sell out a hotel lobby. Okay, people are going to come to a fight no matter what. It's just in human nature to show up. But a fight like this one that had people from around the world intrigued, I think it says a lot about where the sport is. And you know, a lot was made to the fact that Fury had a new trainer, how he came in leaner. You could tell that he came in much better shape. Wilder, where does he go from here? Because I know what Fury's going to do from here. Fury's going to go and have a celebratory tour for the next 6 months. He's going to show the belt around. Anthony Joshua fight's going to get lined up. He's going to get in good shape again, and then we probably will see his career get its first loss when he fights Anthony Joshua in a couple months, probably a year. Wilder's going to go back in the gym, and he's going to be back for this rematch, because it would not shock me if this rematch happens 2 years from now, and we get an Anthony Joshua, Deontay Fury round 3 of this fight. Was it the most enjoyable fight that we've seen? I don't want to say that it's the best fight that we've seen in the past couple of years, but I will say this: I think that it's going to have a large impact on the sport. I think this is going to be a thing that's going to propel boxing even further forward, and this really helps ESPN's streaming platform. ESPN Plus got a ton of new streamers for this fight, and the fact that they're going to continue to put on 30 for 30s and Payton's Place, and the Kobe details are there. And I'm worried about this, and we're going to get into this in a second when we talk about the NBA, is that I'm worried that there's an NBA star who's going to take over the Kobe details, and I don't think that I want it. But let's talk about the NBA. Let's shift over and talk about the next big event that happened this weekend, and that, of course, was Celtics-Lakers. And we knew that this was going to be a very emotional game between the Lakers and Celtics. Not only is it the best rivalry in the sport, but also it's the first time these two teams have faced off since Kobe Bryant's death. We saw Bill Russell early before the game show up in a Kobe jersey. We saw his wife wearing a Kobe number 8 jersey. It means a lot to everybody, I think, in the sport, especially when you consider that both these teams coming into this game are, if not the favorites in their conference, are heavy odds to win their conference, and this is a potential finals matchup in a couple months. So what do we like from the Celtics in this 114-112 loss? Well, I think it's simple. You look at Jason Tatum, who was the 3rd overall pick 3 years ago now, who has been debated constantly on Twitter. Is he overrated? Is he underrated? He's only 19. What do we expect from Jason Tatum? He got the worst tattoo probably in the league. Grammatically, it says gods, as in multiple gods will. There's no apostrophe. I don't know who is in his camp asking him, what are you doing? But he comes off getting joked on social media to show up in the Staples Center and put 41 points on the Los Angeles Lakers. What does that tell you about Jason Tatum? What does that tell you about the guy who spent an offseason working with Kobe Bryant a year ago? He comes in this season with a much better game. I'll be completely honest with you. He worked so hard, I think, on getting to the rim and shooting threes this season. And he's still got the mid-range game that I really like. Everybody joked that Kobe hurt his game and put him back, but I think that he just was too young to understand some of the moves that Kobe was giving him. I think that another offseason working with Kobe and another offseason working on his game has really propelled him to the next level. 41 points on the Los Angeles Lakers. If Jason Tatum, who by all accounts was an all-star this year. When we talked about all-star snubs on the podcast, we talked about, Devin Booker and Bradley Beal in that first initial round of all-stars before Booker got in with the Lillard injury. Nobody mentioned Jason Tatum. But, he has games like this, and what really matters is what he does in the playoffs. If the Celtics end up beating the 76ers and the Bucks and winning the East and going to face the Clippers or the Lakers in the NBA Finals, and Tatum is the guy, the driving force to the Celtics winning these games, then we're going to go back to the drawing board and we're going to say, okay, of the players who are under 25 years old, is Tatum the best, or is he the second best, or is he in the top 5 of players under 25? Where do we put him? But if he continues to play the way that he's playing, if he averages, say, 27, 28 points going down the stretch, and especially in that month of April and June, when we're playing in the playoffs, if he's a guy that's averaging 24, 5 and 5 in the playoffs, then we're going to put him in that different category. And we're going to say, is this guy better than Ben Simmons? Who right now I think is him and Luka and Trae Young, but more him, Ben Simmons and Luka are the two bars, I think, that a guy like Tatum needs to get to be considered one of the best players in the game. He's playing in Boston, which immediately puts a chip on your shoulder. Immediately you're going to get compared to guys like Paul Pierce, Larry Bird, especially when you're playing the position of small forward. He's young. He's got a lot of room to grow, but I really like the game out of Tatum tonight and the way that he was able to just continue to go at LeBron and continue to go at the Lakers. Since day one, since he stepped on the court, he has been continuously growing. And if you watch Celtics games, if you're not a fan who likes to watch the Celtics, if you're not a fan who's watching the growth of some of these young players, I'll tell you now that when the playoffs roll around, this is a promise I can make you. When you're watching Jason Tatum, to this point, he has not let me down, so I can say this. When you're watching Jason Tatum, he's not going to back down from anybody. If Kawhi Leonard's across from him, if LeBron James is across from him, if Giannis Antetokounmpo's across from him, if Luka Doncic is across from him, it doesn't matter. He's going to go at those guys at the same level, at the same speed he would go against anybody else in the league. He's a competitor, and I love Jason Tatum. He's going to be, if he continues to play this good, I know the Celtics lost, but if he continues to play this good, the Celtics aren't going to lose many more games. Let's go on the Lakers side. Anthony Davis leads the Lakers in scoring with 32 points, but the MVP of the game was LeBron James, who was able to hit the fadeaway over Jaylen Brown. And LeBron ends the game with 29 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists, so almost a triple-double. Anthony Davis had 13 points. Had 32 points and 13 rebounds, so a double-double for him. I saw something online really caught my attention. I think ESPN put it out, and they've really gone overboard with the here's $15, build your team. Really gone overboard with that. I hate that graphic. I wish we could move away from it. But it has been interesting, the conversation that Anthony Davis has been put into. Because I was looking at that 2009 Lakers roster when we were doing all the Kobe remembrance, and the roster wasn't great. In fact, I'd argue that it was one of the worst rosters to win the NBA Finals in the last couple of years. Pau Gasol was the ultimate two guy for that Lakers team, with Kobe being the one. I don't think that LeBron's on that same. I think that LeBron's great. Okay, I don't think we can take anything away from LeBron, but I think that he's not at that same level of intensity that Kobe was in that 2009 season. I think Anthony Davis is better than Pau Gasol. I went back and looked at the 2000s with that Lakers team that won 3 titles with Kobe and Shaq. And granted, Anthony Davis should be better than Kobe Bryant when Kobe was 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. He wasn't in his prime. Anthony Davis is in the prime of his career. But Shaq was in his prime, and I think LeBron is not in his. I think he's on the other side. So if you compare those two, I think that the Shaq and Kobe Lakers should be better. They had a better supporting cast as well than this LeBron and Anthony Davis Lakers. But I don't think it's out of the ordinary. I don't think it's out of the question to say that this is one of the best duos in Lakers history. And you really don't know until the whole thing is said and done. You don't know until both of Anthony Davis and LeBron aren't on the team anymore, or this roster falls apart. But if the Lakers win the title this year and are competing for the title for the next 5 years, say, and maybe they get another piece to go with LeBron, maybe they get another piece to go with Anthony Davis, and maybe the next iteration of this Lakers team is Anthony Davis and a young guy, then we can have this conversation. But I think if this Lakers team, especially if they win 1, maybe 2 titles, I think you're going to put them in the same category, not as the best duo, but as one of the top 4 or 5 duos in Lakers history. Again, regular season game in February. I don't want to put too much money on it. I don't want to put too much emphasis on what I liked out of the Lakers and what I liked out of the Celtics. But I'm telling you that if this is a finals rematch from 2010, if this is another game that kind of shows us like, hey, this is what these two teams are feeling like right now, both of these teams were neck and neck the entire game. So if the East is the way that I think it is, if the East plays out the way I think it plays out, the only X-Factor team in the East right now to me, well, there's 2. It's the Raptors and the Heat. Those are the 2 X-Factor teams. But if the Lakers can get it done in the West, and this is the NBA Finals, I would be very excited to see it because I think it would be a 7-game series. All right, let's move on to the last sports story of the day. The news that came out that I was most intrigued by. Out of Scottsdale, Arizona, Madison Bumgarner has been reportedly competing in rodeo events under the alias of Mason Sanders, and even won a $26,000 prize in a team roping competition in December. Now, why does that matter? The 2014 World Series MVP agreed to an $85 million 5-year contract with the Diamondbacks in this offseason. So, this guy is a player who's going to be making $85 million for the life of his contract. So you do some quick math here. $85 million divided by 5 years. It's about $17 million a year. This is why it's so important for MLB players to have good agents. Because it's this next part that got me. Bumgarner infamously hurt his shoulder in the 2017 offseason in a dirt biking accident and missed 3 months of San Francisco's season. He called it a stupid decision at the time, and the Giants didn't press the issue with their 4-time All-Star. Here's my problem. You got a guy who's getting up there in age, who is supposed to be, who needs to be the ace for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And we're going to get into this. If you haven't heard, if you didn't go back, if you haven't listened to it yet, it's the All-Decade Team. That podcast is coming out today as well, breaking down the All-Decade Team. And then we have the every division going up into opening day. That's going to come out too. And we break down the NL West on March 20th. That is when the NL West is. And we'll get into Bumgarner more then. But I'm just saying, this motorcycle accident, dirt biking accident in 2017, hurts his shoulder. He really hasn't been the same since. And the Diamondbacks are a team that is competing in the NL West, arguably the most top-heavy division in sports, outside of maybe the AFC East with the Patriots. But the Dodgers are a great team, and they need Bumgarner to be good in Arizona to compete with them. So this news breaks Sunday night. Immediately, I think they need to find this guy. At least the $27,000 that he won in this roping competition. And he said that it's part of his personality. They said that it's part of the way that he plays the game. I don't buy it, because you need to be you need to A, be competing at a high level, but B, you need to be making sure that you're healthy and you're safe. And if you're doing this type of stuff, all it takes is falling off a horse to break your arm, and your career is potentially done. Bumgarner, the greatest postseason pitcher of all time. I don't love this move by him, but I knew it was funny news, so I wanted to break that down for you. All right, for those of you that are just tuning back into the podcast, skipping all the sports stuff, we got to talk about pop culture. Rihanna was at the 51st NAACP Awards this weekend, winning the prestigious President's Award, which is given to, quote, the recognition of special achievements and distinguished public service. Rihanna had founded a foundation in 2012 in honor of her grandparents. The nonprofit champions and funds education and emergency response programs worldwide, according to the website. She talked about unity in it, and I wanted to bring this up. I want to play a clip from it talking about unity and allyship. She started the speech off talking about how the award was bigger than her, but not bigger than us, the people in the room. How you can, do so much for your community, but at the end of the day, it takes a group of people to make the changes that you want it to see happen. And the part that really got me, and again, different, things are going to hit for different people, but for me, she brings up how many of us, talking about the people in the room at the NAACP Awards, have colleagues and partners and friends from other races and sexes and religions. And she's trying to make a point of how many people in the room have diverse friends and what it means for friendship and what it means to allyship. And this is the clip that really got me.
They want to break bread with you, right? They like you? Well then, this is their problem too. So when we're marching and protesting and posting about the Michael Brown Jr.'s and the Tatiana Jeffersons of the world, tell your friends to pull up.
Tell your friends to pull up. That's what really got me. Because I have talked about this with my friends before. We've mentioned it before countless times about what is the role of an ally if not for action. Because there's a lot of people online. There's a lot of people that will get behind a Twitter screen, get behind a computer, and tweet their support for Black Lives Matter. Or will tweet their support for different groups, different allyships. But I had a friend ask me one time, what are you doing? What are you doing to help move forward the social conscience? What are you doing to help move forward social rights and civil rights for different disenfranchised groups? And it took me by surprise. It took me by shock. Because you think when you talk about allyship, a lot of times it's a pin. A lot of times it's just being out there and talking about it, being out there and accepting it. But that's only one part of the equation. Rihanna brings up an excellent point, I think. What are we doing that what are we doing the people who aren't disenfranchised? What are we doing the people who do have a platform, that do have a voice, that could do something? Because I've always said this, words matter. You know, if I say something on the podcast that comes off a certain way, those words matter. You can't take them back. If you say something to somebody, words matter. You should mean what you say. But you know what matters more? Is action. You can talk a big talk. You can use your 280 characters on Twitter. But what are you doing to affect change today? What are you doing to help raise awareness today? You know, I talk a lot of time about how I want to help this group or that group. And it's really hard to not only say things and sit behind a microphone, but also get out and do things. And I've been trying to, personally, recently, go out, register voters. Go out, raise awareness for different organizations. Raise awareness for different causes. And being that foot person who isn't in charge of anything, who's just taking orders and just trying to help move forward a certain ideal. Right? I think Rihanna's NAACP speech is going to be one of those things that is going to be real clicky for 24 hours. I already saw it's not trending anymore. It's going to be real clicky for 24 hours, and people are going to stop talking about it. But I think as somebody that has a little bit of a platform, and as somebody from the mountains of Caucasia who has that white privilege, who can kind of sit back and has the ability to not only say things but also do things, I think it's important for people to recognize what she is saying. That you can't, I personally, I don't think that you can be friends with somebody. I don't think that you can be true friends with somebody, have a true friendship with somebody, not see the plight that they're going through, not see the pain, not see the, obstacles that they face on just a daily, regular day life, and not do something about it. Words matter, thoughts matter, prayers matter, but action matters more. And I really like what Rihanna had to say about that. So that's going to do it for the podcast. Check out the baseball show. The all-decade team should be up right now. A lot of controversial picks, so you're going to want to check that out. Gambling is on Friday. So is Film Friday. We're reviewing Downhill, the Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Will Ferrell movie. It's going to be really good, so you're going to want to check that out. And then, of course, all of the divisional breakdowns every Monday and Friday, all the way up till baseball season. So, a lot of fun for the rest of this week. You're going to want to tune in. Thank you again for 50 amazing episodes. Let's get 50 times 50 amazing more. I'll see you tomorrow where we break down Amazon Prime's Hunters on Television Tuesday. See you tomorrow.